Ghost Cult Magazine is welcomed in by our good friend Etienne from Alpha Bootis. I hope I said that correctly.
Yep.
The one of the few classes I ever failed in life was French, and I love Canada and I love French Canada, specifically the French cities. And it pains me that I'm like, so Anglo and American, so stereotypically American that I'm there and I'm, brutalizing the language, reading off a menu, trying to be like respectful but sucking at life. So
I mean,
thank you for bearing with me.
trying to be respectful is the one thing that's like the minimum, and then everything on top is gravy. Uh, but yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I'm gonna butcher the English language a small bit with the H's and
Nah,
the R's and whatnot.
you're good, man. We're good. We've talked before, and but not for here. So
Uh-huh.
welcome to our little corner of the interwebs. And I've had the privilege of following your musical career for a couple of years, and we've gotten to know each other a little bit online. And I love what you do. I love that
Thanks.
you seem outwardly very prolific. I don't know if you write music constantly, but it seems like you have new stuff coming out all the time. So anybody in this environment under the last like whatever year and a half who's been able to just work, no disrespect to anyone
Uh-huh.
who couldn't work, like, oh, I can't do anything, I'm not inspired, or I have problems, or life has gotten in the way, but you have found a way to continue to be productive.
Yeah, I've been lucky to be kind of in a neat little bubble where I was working from home most of the time before the pandemic. And then I had like 2 or 3 really rough months where like all of my plans for the band were, all of our plans for 2020 were touring, and that all vanished. So we took a moment to adjust, but we're releasing an album right now and we have 17 songs written for the next one, because whenever we sit down to write, it just comes out, because we have such a diverse array of styles that we don't really have to say no to the ideas that come to us. And like, we say no to the bad ones, but we don't ever say no because it doesn't fit. Because we're gonna try, like, if we want to write a straight up funk tune with a brass section, we're gonna make that fit into the story, or and if it's a good song that we feel needs to be heard, we're gonna accommodate the style of the band for it. But yeah, I've been lucky to be able to keep releasing stuff. Of course, working remotely with the rest of the band has been hard. Like, I'm the only guy in the band who has a little bit of experience with sound and engineering and production and recording, so the others had to kind of learn on the work. But we're making it work, and I'm like, in Canada, we've been really lucky that the government sent us, a stimulus check every month for 8 months. So I didn't have to worry about my financials for quite a while, and like, that's a blessing, of course, because when you don't know if you're going to put food on the table for the month and pay your rent, you can't be creative like this.
So true. And props to Canada for getting it right. Sometimes I know that people have a lot of fatigue over the lockdowns. I interviewed a band from Hamilton last week, and they were, making the best of it. Their whole
Hmm.
band lives in a house, so they don't have to send files. They literally cut tracks, make videos, do merch right out of their own house, the whole band. And
That's
but
great.
Hamilton, like I guess most of Ontario, is super locked down. And for whatever reason, and America is also, we're having some surges. It seems like we're getting better. We have stepped up a lot, and I'm really happy about that. And I love Canada. Like I said, I'm a frequent visitor to Eastern Canada, mostly in my life as a fan, for vacations, usually surrounding metal festivals and
Uh-huh.
music
Yeah.
stuff. When I lived in Boston, I once drove 20 hours with my friends back and forth to go to Trois-Rivières for the annual metal festival there.
Oh yeah, yeah, the MDF, yeah, that's a great one.
Basically just to see Chris Ian, who never toured. They had gone like 5 years without coming to North America, without coming to America, to the USA. So
Yeah.
then they had gone to Canada on their way to Europe. So we're like, okay, we're gonna go to Quebec and go see them.
Yeah, I did a similar thing for Olver when they came
Yes,
in New York. took
I
the train
get
down.
so we were at that show together then, which is
Yep.
crazy. I didn't know you then because it's a little over 2 years ago now.
Uh-huh.
And I love that show so much, and I love Oliver so much. And I see a lot, this is kind of skipping ahead in my interview plan, but I do notice like some influence of Oliver vocally, sonically, more recent Oliver. I'm a fan of their whole career. They have never
Uh-huh.
made a bad record to me. I love everything they have ever done. There's very few artists I can say that about. I love everything they have ever done. And I love this modern couple of albums that is kind of like Depeche Mode,
Yeah.
synthwave over as much as black metal over. I love them equally.
So the Ulver connection goes pretty deep actually, because Alpha Boötis is the same name as the star Arcturus. So Arcturus is the Latin name, and Alpha Boötis is like the standard Greek name.
Mm.
And my co-writer Francis, he's a huge fan of Arcturus, the band, and he wanted to pay tribute when he wrote that first song, "Jump to Alpha Boötis."
Mm.
And so we took that name, and then when Oliver released the assassination of Julius Caesar, I was like in full-on synthwave mode at that time. I was listening to like maybe 20% metal and 80% synth music.
Mm.
And that record was like on repeat every week for a couple of months. And it happens that when I sing, I have a very soft voice, because I have like I've been having issues with like vocal fatigue a lot whenever I try to push it, because I did silly things in my teenage years, like screaming to Machine Head songs a bit too much, and so I have a timbre that's similar to Garm's when I sing, and so the synth, the metal edge combined with the synth is a connection, and the name comes from one of Garm's projects. So it's an insightful reading of her music you got there.
There you go. Well, I'm gonna just put this out there in the universe. If you ever want to cover from that assassination album, "So Falls the World," I do a very mean vocal part on that. I did that,
Awesome.
and I haven't been making any music for a couple of years actually, or doing anything. And I think last fall, I think there's the lock-in had me going stir crazy back in Brooklyn. And I did a couple of happy hour with Heather. Shout out to Heather Votson, our mutual friend. And I did a couple of acoustic sessions. Bad. I haven't really played guitar and sang in years, but I did that song. I did "So Falls the World" just as
Awesome.
a sort of somber acoustic part, just the chords basically, and singing along. No other, I'm not sophisticated enough to put a beat behind myself anymore. But if you ever want to cover it, I'm here for that.
I'll hit you up.
Down to lend my help. And yeah, I love that. And I'm gonna say, like, space disco synth metal brings to mind a lot of things, but I feel like musically your whole band has a lot more depth than just that. It's just, I think you hit on this really cool, unique sound that is ultimately really served you well. But I feel like, just going even back to the Codex record, there's a lot you guys can do.
Yeah, so it's all an accident for like the way Alpha Boötis is developing. It started just Frak had written "Jump to Alpha Boötis" and "Circling the Belt of Orion," two like synthwave songs. He programmed them in Guitar Pro, and like he exported the split tracks of Guitar Pro audio and mixed that a bit, and that was like the first release he put out. It was just like him putting stuff on his SoundCloud. And then I heard that and was like, well, I just picked up Ableton a few months ago. I'm starting to get into, production. Let me like remix those songs and we can make them sound like Carpenter Brit or whatnot. And then we got asked, we released an EP, episode 1, and we got asked to play a show like 3 months after the EP had dropped. So like 3 days after the EP drops, we get asked to play a show that's 3 months in the future. And we're like, okay, we got to put a band together. So we recruit friends and we end up with like a rock band. And then when we started writing music, it started to kind of bleed at, like, all of the metal elements started piling on. And the space disco synth metal was purely a joke at the beginning, but like it works so well. People are intrigued by it. And we've been putting more disco in to live up to the name. But as we evolve, like the 17 songs we got written for the next album are even more diverse than what we've done so far. We've got uh some legit breakdowns in there, some metalcore, like Gothenburg style riffs with synthesizers on top. We've got some straight up funk, or even more synth pop style sections with soft singing, and so we're just expanding outwards towards all of these genres. And I made a roast today about my band where it's like we're boldly going where Coheed and Cambria has gone before. Uh,
Well, better vocals, but I like Coheed a lot. Sorry. Oh,
it's
I
okay.
like them a lot, and I'm a fan and I love Claudio, generally speaking. And there is a compare. You could make a comparison there between the two bands. It's not unfair.
We're lucky that our singer is now a bachelor of classical singing, and he's going to get his master's in the next few years. So he's a gift to the band. Like, his voice is amazing. And every song we write, he's like, okay, so I sang a high B on Pioneer's Hymn. So for the next record, I'm going to try to limit myself to a high B because I can't really do the higher notes like consistently live. And then he comes in with a song and it's like a high C sharp, and we're like, okay, man, you're digging your own grave for live, but we're gonna do it. Like, it's
It reminds me kind of like Mastodon with Crack the Sky. They made a piece of music so brilliant they almost couldn't perform it live.
yeah, no, definitely. We're
Or
we're
Pink Floyd
always
The
on the
Wall.
verge of that.
Yeah, or like Pink Floyd The Wall. Like they said, like, okay, we made something so epic. I don't know if we can recreate it
Uh-huh.
naturally
Yeah.
or easily. And credit to them. They went on tour and did the, I imagine there's a future of this band where you guys will come up with maybe this record, maybe another record in the future where you'll do. I could see you doing like a concept record and then performing it live with theatrics and stuff.
Funny you're saying that. That is the 17 track record we've written. It's a whole. We had written songs, and I started to see connections between them, and we wanted to like create a story arc. So we went in and we were like, okay, so this melody is this character, and that character is going to do this, and blah blah blah. And the melodies are evolving throughout, and we're writing like almost like a novel to go with it, and we're going to try to bring that to the stage, um, and maybe try to use those new features that Spotify has been rolling out, like the music and talk stuff, so we can do like an audiobook album where we read you the stories and then you have the songs in between the story bits. um, but yeah, that's like, we most of us in the band listened to prog as we grew up and in our teenage years. So whenever we try to do stuff, we're like, what would Pink Floyd do? What would Mastodon do? What would Queensryche do? And go from there.
Right. What I love about Jump to Alpha Bootis, what I really love about this new track, separately from, sort of as a step forward from
Mhm.
Stowaway Ants, and I know they were written over different periods of time and the different things. But what I love is that it's kind of got like not the heaviness, but like the progginess of like a Leprous. But
Mhm.
then like the synth part that reminded me of like Das Mortal. You mentioned Carpenter Brut, but I
Uh-huh.
was thinking of Das Mortal or Health,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
or groups like that where there's this like very cool Euro synthy lead part in it that I really, or maybe it's not a solo, but it's like more like a dominant lead part
Uh-huh.
that I love on the synths that I really catches your ear. It's such a good earworm.
Yeah, no, it's Frak has a very, like, he has a very strong talent for coming up with very memorable melodies, and memorable melodies, and I write them like on Jump. All the melodies are Frak's doing, because I came in after that song was like laid out, but I did all of the production and stuff. And what was cool with that song is that was the first piece we wrote and produced, and then we played it live at every show, so like a dozen or so local shows. And like, I played a thing on synth, like that was synths on the album. I played it as a guitar player, and it changed how that part felt. And then when we added a saxophone to our lineup in 2019, 19, wow, that word is hard today. Um, we added saxophone to the song live, and now we wanted to kind of take this song that had like organically evolved through playing live and put that on the record, which is the thing I feel few artists have the chance to do nowadays, because you put out the album and then you tour it, and then you have to move on to the next thing. You don't have the luxury of doing what like Def Leppard did when they toured for 2 years on the back of songs that were not released and then went into the studio. And that, I think that became Hysteria, but I'm not sure. It might have been the record after, before that. But yeah, so and the Das Mortal like Euro connection is, I think there's an unspoken connection between Euro power metal and Euro trance or Euro beat, that like it's just it's there, but nobody talks about it because the metal heads don't want to be compared to the trance heads, and but to me it's evident. And Das Mortal being a Montreal local as well, even though he spends lots of time in Berlin. I'm not sure about his whereabouts these days, but whatever. Like that's definitely an influence for us. And even though we don't do club music, I think there's a power to the catchiness of club music that benefits our style.
Well said. And I think metalheads are coming. I mean, like, you know, synth music and the synth influence coming into metal has had a humongous run. But we had a Rammstein record a year and a half ago. Yeah. Nothing needs to be said about their greatness. Bands as big as Ghost and as cool as Haunt have been using synths to tremendous effect. So I expect everybody to just continue to double down. I know the word disco has bad connotations for some people, but I think in the context you guys use it in, it totally works. And, you know, like I said, there's just always going to be purists and elitists and a lot of arms folded guys. And then there's going to be everybody else that's just here for a good song. We're here for a good time. And I think, you know, when you have a story that's compelling along with the music like you guys do, I think it makes it a lot more enjoyable and probably makes more people gravitate to you.
Yeah, and I think also in Quebec, disco has been like it was super big in the 80s. Like Montreal was the disco town in Canada, and so for us it was never it never had that pejorative, you know, uncool vibe that other societies assigned to it. And honestly, I think synth music in metal, like I grew up as well listening to a lot of the tech metal and gent sound, and they take guitars and make them sound like synthesizers like Car Bomb or even Gojira. Like Gojira do a lot of very cool, innovative sound design with their guitars, and I think that's just gonna open up more avenues for expression in metal, or even stuff like on the dark end of the spectrum, like Author and Punisher, which is like electronic metal, but it doesn't sound like what you'd expect. You know, it's super brutal. And I just hope more metal bands start using the production techniques that hyperpop is using, because I want to see those glitchy vocals, those really distorted kick drums and stuff in metal songs as well. I'm not the one to do it because that's not my personal aesthetic, but I wish someone out there does it and breaks the world.
I think we're gonna see like probably poppy or ghost metal. Like, you know, it might be related to trap metal. So again, it's got to be a specific kind of audience. But I think of an artist like Poppy. Oh, who's the proteges of Fever 333? Their name is going to escape me. The Nova Twins, I think it is, from England.
Yeah. That
they also have like a little glitch pop, hyper pop side to them that I think is really cool. It's actually like the song of theirs that I really like is the glitchy pop, hyper pop song. And then, you know, there's always going to be somebody else, you know, someone else is going to bring that in, a baby metal. Somebody is going to add one more flavor to their thing that's popular for whatever reason. You know, fans are going to convert that way. But yeah, man, it's super cool. I love what you guys are doing. You know, it's interesting that I can talk to you about, because you're a big gear person too. I find it interesting that, like, in the age we're in now, where, you know, a home studio is easier to build than it was, and you're not, if you want to do synth music and you play guitar or you want to incorporate synths, you used to be like really, you either had to be able to play keyboards or you had these synth guitars in the 80s, like
Yeah.
the old school. I think of Alan Holdsworth, who I love, and others who used to sort of mess around with that stuff. Living Color, at one point of their first couple of albums, there was some synth guitar stuff that it really was like a mutant instrument. And in a
Uh-huh.
way, I think it's interesting, like, or keytars. I think it's very interesting that that stuff is also still back in fashion now and
Hmm.
being used again, like almost found old school instruments in a modern context, even though you don't need them because there's amp modeling and there's all
Uh-huh.
kinds
Yeah.
of plugins and ways you can do it. But like for you, would any of that interest you to sort of go backwards gear wise and apply it to now songwriting?
At some point, yes, but it takes me a long time to learn how to use a piece of gear. So I right now I'm kind of moving really fast with my projects that I don't really have like I can't clear my schedule for a month and go like, okay, I'm learning how to play, Mellotron or the synth guitar or stuff. But it's definitely like if I ever get to a point where I can kind of relax, have a maybe the band is big enough to have a manager so I don't have to do all of that myself or whatnot, and I can start experimenting more. That's an avenue. The funny thing is I'm the perfect example of I program and produce most of the synths for Alpha Boötis, and I don't play keyboard. Like I have a grade 1 level in keyboard. I can play you, I know where the chords are, and I can play you like Sweet Dreams by Marilyn Manson on a keyboard. Um, or like the Heart and Soul thing, but I don't. But Harakoa, our singer, he's a classically trained pianist as well as a classically trained singer. So he's out there, playing Bach passadas and stuff like that for fun. So he he's been playing more stuff on the new album, like recording the actual synth solos instead of having me program them because we had the time to do it. But yeah, digging deep and going back to find these old pieces of gear is definitely something I'm gonna enjoy doing someday. Um, right now, it's more like I use very, very cutting edge gear to sound like Pink Floyd did in the '70s, which is a fun thing as well.
My favorite band ever. Nothing wrong with that. You know what piece of gear that I would really, if I was ever gonna get back into making music seriously, I always wanted that I never had was Taurus Moog bass pedals. And like
Oh
you
yeah.
can barely get them now. They're not when you find them, they're broken or refurbished. They're hard to find brand new. They're a fortune.
Mhm.
There are several thousands of dollars to afford even a used beat up one.
Uh-huh.
But I wish that some company would come and try to like, Korg at one point was like, let's take the Moogs that you can't get anymore and put out like a fake one. I
Mhm.
wish that someone like Korg would do like, here's our version of a bass pedal Taurus rig.
Yeah.
Because I like some of my favorite stuff. Not so much Floyd, but obviously Crimson and Rush did that stuff a lot, and even Camel and other sort of underrated progressive rock
Mhm.
bands.
Mhm.
Kraftwerk, I think, has one song with one. I love Kraftwerk also. Let's just talk about
Yeah.
how many metalheads love Kraftwerk and Can and that whole era of greatness.
There's such a joy to craft work. Like it's so simple. It's almost punk in its simplicity. How they make a song, the melody has like three notes, they repeat it for 6 minutes, and they add all of these new instruments that they build themselves to it. It's um I remember watching a documentary that made the case that Kraftwerk were more influential than the Beatles because they were one of the few European artists that inspired Black American artists, whereas usually it's the opposite, where like the Kraftwerk inspired some of the producers that started doing the Chicago house movement and in the '80s. So they they gave back in a way what others were taking, and it's rare. Usually it's African American vernacular will get copied and emulated by everybody, and so does the music. Like trap is it came from very underground Memphis artists from the black community and all, and it became the biggest thing. um, so yeah, I love Kraftwerk. I love I'm not big on the engineering of the gear. Like I don't know, the circuits used and whatnot, but it's definitely at some point, if I was to collaborate with someone who was, I'd have a lot of fun, digging in, and I'd focus on the sound, they'd focus on the, how to make it happen.
Nice. Let's talk about artwork, because I feel like for
Yeah.
a band like yours, artwork is so important. Stowaway Ants, if it was just the name and the music, it tells a story by itself. But that artwork for that EP, this new artwork, I don't know if this is just the full album artwork that's on Bandcamp now, or if this is just a single and there's
Yeah, this is just a single.
Okay.
We have one
So we don't
piece
have
of
the full,
artwork
we don't
per
have the full
song.
artwork yet. Okay.
No, it's not. We're still like kind of working on it as we go, because we had some, with the pandemic, and we had like things open back up, things shut down, so we had to. But we've been. So this is the second artist we've worked with, Velocipasta. That's her like her handle on Ko-fi and Instagram. So we were working with Dave Peterson of Hallucinogenic Bulb before for all of our releases. Great guy. Very important part of the Philly music scene. Like, he's the band-aid that holds the DIY music scene together with its flyers. But then Dave wanted to move away from making art, visual art, and into more music. So we went with Velocipasta. She was a friend of a friend. And I always come to the artists we work with this crazy concept. Like, this is what the song's about. Like, this is what I think would look good on the cover. And then I let them kind of brainstorm ideas. Stowaway Ant was a very immediate piece of writing, inspired by real life event, but you'll see what I mean. I was driving from North Carolina in 2019 and we left like the Outer Banks of North Carolina. We had camped on the beach, and then we ended up in New Jersey that night to camp in the Pinelands. And there was an ant with us in the car. And I just imagine, like, how would it feel if you were this small and had traveled like 800 miles? And I'm like, okay, well, that feels like an astronaut going to Mars. Like, that's the kind of, so that's where the song came from. For the rest of the album, we have like stories for each song. So we're working with the artist to develop those. We're going to drop an artwork for the second single, Ecumenopolis. I can give you that little tidbit of exclusive information right here. In a couple of days, we should be announcing like release date and whatnot. But that artwork is like showing the city where most of the stories take place for this album and the next. So we're kind of laying the groundwork, and I think visual art is the gateway into the music. It has to represent what the music's about. So we have to have like this very colorful art. Because as much as I like, Dan Seagrave and all of those classic death metal records, it wouldn't work for a band like us, because you would be expecting, Mastodon and Gojira, and you would be getting Daft Punk, and then it would be off-putting.
Right on. We will make sure to link your artist in the description of this interview and everything.
Yeah, I'll send you all our stuff.
Send me all the links. We'll get a shout out happening, because we love to do that. Super cool. I know it's been kind of a hard year. There have really been almost no shows, and as lockdowns continue to stop and start, it's hard to predict the future of live music. Mm-hmm. But of course, you have a band and you enjoy playing live. Do you have any tentative idea when you can get out there and perform some of this stuff live again?
I have no idea when we can perform. We haven't. So we played a show in September because we were lucky that like they opened up venues. We played a venue that usually houses like 200 people, and we sold it out with 40 tickets. So that was a surreal experience. But we haven't met in person more than like one person at a time since September, since that show. So right now I'm in the process of renting like a rehearsal space so I can set up my own little studio and work there every day without bothering my girlfriend, who's working next to me right now. Because I live in a big flat with 6 other people, my girlfriend included. So it's hard to, I can't just start screaming at 3 in the afternoon because everybody's working. So that's the plan. And then starting from there, we're going to start rehearsing and maybe try to do a live stream show from that space at the end of the summer. But when venues open back, there's going to be such a rush of people. Like all of the big bands are going to try to wrestle their way in, and so many venues have closed here that, like, for good. We were losing venues before the pandemic because the rents keep increasing. Like Canada has the worst housing market right now for prices. Like Vancouver is more expensive than Hong Kong, which is saying something. So I have no plans for shows right now, except that, like, as soon as we can set one up, we're going to do it. We're going to bring all of our friends and have the biggest party that we never had this year and the last. And also, I think having trying to make a tour happen, like in Canada, is going to be on the map for 2022, and maybe go down and play, the big East Coast cities that I love visiting. But we'll get there.
All right. And that sounds really exciting about a live stream. I think you guys would have a lot of fun creatively with a live stream, visuals and things like that. I think would play to your strengths as a group. And yeah, that's very, very exciting. I just have a couple more questions for you, man. You've been terrific.
All good.
Like I said, it's been lucky for me to get to know you and follow your band. And what I would like to do is come back after this album is released and all these singles have come out and retrace this journey and follow up with you with a second interview, because I think it would be worth talking about this evolution of what's to come. I'm very excited about it. I do have to ask, I love the cover from Stowaway Ants. So you did the Police cover. Are there any other bands you'd like to take like an inventive or unique shot at covering?
So we have one. I'm going to give you a second exclusive because I like you so much. Curtis might slap me on the wrist for spilling so much beans, but
definitely will.
So in April last year, a well-known French metal band released a single and then nothing for like a couple of months. And that band was Gojira, and they released Another World. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, I want to make a synthwave cover of that. So this is the cover we have on the album that's coming out. It's our space disco synth metal take on Another World by Gojira. I had to like adapt Joseph's screaming vocals to like a sort of Depeche Mode style of delivery. It was really a blast to do, because like the way that song is written, it's very simple parts that combine to create a very, very amazing song. So I had fun. Some stuff doesn't work in synth music that they do, and so I had to like replace it with new stuff. But we have like, if we so in 2018 we had this crazy idea that Alpha Bootis would be like also an 80s top 40 cover band, like, and we do like double sets because we love doing covers. We did in shows before, we did Land of Confusion. We mixed the Genesis and the Disturbed versions of the song with our own take. And in the future, there are a couple of things we want to tackle, especially some of the like Stargazers by Rainbow that I think would be great. There's also an amazing Quebec band called Offenbach, and they were as big as Deep Purple in the UK in Quebec. And they have a couple of science fiction inspired songs that we'd like to take on, and it would be like an homage to our hometown. And because there's a couple of bands like that, like Harmonium, Offenbach, and like Les Colocs, which they were as big as like Nirvana, but only in Quebec, or as big as the Rolling Stones, but only in Quebec. They would sell out, 3 or 4 nights in a row in arenas, and it's crazy. So yeah, paying homage to these Quebec bands, and at some point I'm going to feel confident enough to do a metal cover of a Daft Punk song, but I'm not, like, it's too close to, I don't feel comfortable in my abilities to take on such an amazing band that means so much to me.
Guys, I hear you. And yeah, like I'm here for all that. That sounds amazing. I actually know Offenbach also because I'm a huge
Awesome.
nerd and you know, tape trading and other things like that. I turned down
Yeah.
that band in my formative years. But for the final question, a question that I tend to end on a wild card question, and this is almost a question I feel like I didn't know it, but it was created with you in mind. Except I didn't know you.
Mhm.
I started asking this question, you know, many years ago. So one of the wild card questions I like to ask is the my version of the desert island discs. Instead of the desert island, you're going on a spaceship tomorrow. Elon Musk and Grimes call you. Etienne, we have one seat left on the spaceship for you. Do you want to come? Yes, you do. And you can take 5 records with you only for the rest of eternity. You know, space travel. You're going to space. What are
Uh-huh.
the 5 records that you take with you?
So going right from what we were talking about, Leptade by Harmonium, because it's such a fantastic story, fantastic. Like it's the Quebec equivalent of Dark Side of the Moon for me. It's the same level of genius. Then I'd take Shadows of the Sun by Olver so that I can have music to sleep to because it's the best napping music there is, which is like I'm not saying that pejoratively. It's just great. Um, I would take okay, Falling into Infinity by Dream Theater because I had a similar experience with it. I was on a trip in Greece for 2 weeks, and that was the only album on my iPod because something went wrong with the file transfer. So I listened to that like 20 times in 2 weeks and didn't get tired of it. Then Mariner by Cult of Luna and Julie Christmas because I need some good sludge, and Random Access Memories by Daft Punk because I feel like that record is, I think, the greatest record of their career, and sadly the last as well. But it's also a testament to what electronic music can be conceptually. You know, it can do the same things that progressive rock did, even if you can dance to it.
Nice. That is a great list. Thank you for humoring me with that final question.
My
Etienne, has
pleasure.
been wonderful to catch up with you here. Thank you for hanging out and sharing your story with Ghost Cult. Not always easy to answer these questions about art and music and high-minded ideas, but you do it well. And like I said, I'm really
Thank you.
excited for this full album. And we are going to reconnect again when this album is out. I imagine later in 2021 with all these singles and the final artwork. And we're going to talk just
Uh-huh.
about the album and have a bunch of laughs.
All right. Thanks a lot for inviting me. It's always great chatting with you. And I'll see you in the marketing mixer. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks for hanging out with Ghost Cult. We'll see you soon.